So thank you for coming. This is possibly the first of maybe a few that we'll do question and answer, meet and greet with State Representative Beth O'Connor. And we also have Town Manager Steve Eldridge joining us today. So we were thinking we would do your questions, if anyone had questions, formally sitting down, and then break off and have coffee and refreshments, and then you can talk to either of these folks about, you know, whatever it is that you'd like to talk to in private. But it's going to be all informal, seeing as we don't have a great, huge group. So I'd like to introduce Beth O'Connor and Steve Eldridge. Thank you. Oh, and do you want to say a few words?
Yeah,
This is Paula Laporte.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Paula.
I'm the president of the library.
I get emails from you all the time.
So the Berwick Library Association just wants to welcome you and thank you for coming, and have you come back anytime you would like. When you said once a month, that may be a little bit too much, but we certainly, maybe we could switch off some early evening and day to see if it makes a difference for more people to come. But we certainly welcome you and want you to feel a part of the library.
Thank you.
And also, I just learned today that Susan Collins just announced that $240 million was approved for museums and libraries across the country.
Excellent.
So that's a good thing for libraries.
We'll direct some of it this way.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for everything you do. So I am your state representative, and I'm here basically to listen to what you have to say, answer your questions. I'm sure Steve will do the same, and I'll do the best I can to the best of my ability.
Okay, go ahead.
Sending home care for all to ballot, you oppose that, and I'm wondering what I don't understand about that.
Well, the one that just failed? The question that
Since you
just failed?
opposed, the vote was to send home care for all, to the ballot this November, and you opposed it. I'm wondering, I just need a picture of what that.
Yes. So actually, I wasn't the only one that opposed that.
Oh, I'm sure.
So all of the gubernatorial candidates also, from every party, opposed it, and so did the home care health workers. It was, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the cost to do that would have been absolutely astronomical, and what bothered me the most about that was there was no litmus test on it. So for instance, an individual that was making $200,000 a year would have qualified. The way that piece of legislation was written, they would have qualified for that, and there would have been no questions asked about that. And there was also, you could come to Maine just like that, and you could live in any town, any city in the state of Maine, and we would have to pay for you immediately for that home health care.
So if that sounds like a badly written bill.
It was a very badly written bill.
If it was somehow address those problems, do you think that being the oldest state in the union that we could have that? Because it would save money in the long run.
I do believe in home health care.
Could you write a bill?
I could write a bill.
Would you?
I believe that there have, yes, I actually could. Yes, I could do that for you.
I'd be very happy
I
if you
could.
would.
And actually what I thought was a better idea was to get, number one, we need more people working in the home health care industry. We're really tapped for employees right now.
The salaries.
Yeah, and salaries are really low, and Governor LePage actually put forward legislation. He put it forward and wanted to have it passed to increase the rate of pay for home health care workers. But
Well, how could he, and I don't want to monopolize, I'll shut up
that's
after
okay.
this.
No, that's
But
fine.
how could he find money for that, and he couldn't do Medicare expansion for all, because even though the people voted for it, so there's money in both, money needed for both of those things.
Right, there was no funding mechanism
Well-
in the Medicaid expansion bill,
Okay.
and we tried to put a funding mechanism in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't pass through appropriations.
So the other thing would pass that he supported?
Actually, no, what happened with a lot of the funding for the disabled, we put $53 million in the budget, and that was cut out as well.
Because cut out by,
People thought that other things were more important.
so it was a legislature cutting,
Yes.
not Mr. LePage cutting. Hmm.
No, it wasn't,
Okay,
unfortunately.
yeah, thank you for addressing that.
You're welcome.
Do you think that the new immigration laws are going to affect the ability to get healthcare workers, seeing as so many of our immigrants do go into that field? And we've already seen it in the hospitality. So many people don't have the help they need. And so where would they come from to beef up the healthcare system if we did do if you wrote legislation for that? Where are you gonna get the workers?
So I don't have any control over it, that's a federal issue.
It is a federal issue,
It is a
correct.
federal issue, and I work for a resort, and we had a hard time.
Yeah.
And I think the visas for legal immigration need to be expanded. I don't know how to do that. I've talked to Senator Collins about that, and I really think that we need more people on staff trying to get legal immigrants here. We have 4 Hondurans, and they've just gone to Colorado, maybe Utah. Anyway, they worked with us for the entire season. Phenomenal, hardest workers that I've ever met. There was kind of a language barrier, but I learned how to say necesita toallas and learned a little bit of Spanish and how to, speak with them. And virtually it was a learning experience, but I honestly believe that our legal immigration system needs, and the people who have waited in line need to come to the top of the list. And I believe that the visas that we give out need to be expanded, because there are people who, they want to work and they want to work here, and they do a good job. I've seen them do a good job firsthand, and I see that they pay into our system. They expand our system in a wonderful manner. They earn money here, a lot of money in comparison to your average yearly salary in Honduras is about $7,000 or $8,000. So they're earning a lot more than that. They're paying here, they're paying rent or for their room rate here, they're buying food, and then they're also buying things to bring back to their family, and they're also taking care of their own family and sending money back to them. So it's a win-win situation for all of us. I have to really say it needs to be done legally, because if we don't do it legally and we let illegal immigrants come in here and trump our laws, and I don't mean saying trump our laws, I mean, if we don't do it in a correct manner, then we wind up paying for these people, and not only just is it going to be costly, but we don't know who they are, why they're here, and worst of all, the people that are here legally go to the back of the bus. Or the people that are waiting to come here, those people, they're hurt too. They've been waiting, some of them for years, and some of them are waiting to bring their own families here. So it's a hard situation, but staff to process these individuals. A lot of them are great people. I know, I work with them.
Right.
No?
Just a quick question. What do you think the main issues for Maine are that the legislature will take up?
Oh, gosh. There's so many issues. I mean, we have a lot. One of my top issues has been our most vulnerable, which I have watched. We fund a lot of different things. We were funding to repair a lighthouse down in Kittery. We fund a lot of things that don't rise to the level of priority. And we keep promising, and I keep watching our list for the disabled go up and up and up. And they too get put to the back of the bus. And I've been working with a gentleman, his name is Dennis Steen. He's here from Berwick. And I've been working with him on the Section 21 waiver program, which we're seeing a couple hundred a year apply for this program. And it's not the most seriously disabled of disabled, but I'm working with him on a pilot program, and it actually will help I put in this legislation last week, it'll help put the individuals that are on the most disabled list that are looking to be out on their own but still need some help. It puts them into a home with, say, 2 or 3 individuals that just need a little bit of help, you know, every day. And then it puts another individual who's been having a hard time finding housing that works. And it's a great volunteer program, but I'm looking to do a pilot program because it'll take people off the Section 21 list for waivers. And it'll also help an individual who's having a hard time finding an apartment or a home. And so it's everybody working together with state and volunteerism, and it's a win-win situation. So I see that as a big issue. I see energy, as I always see energy, as a big issue. Transportation and funding our roads and bridges is huge. That costs a significant surplus. I do not know the number off the top of my head. I do know that that surplus will probably be spent pretty fast, probably not in all the ways that I want it to be spent. I think it's imperative that we continue to invest in our budget stabilization fund with that surplus. I think when we do that and invest into that budget stabilization fund, we've already got a lot of bonds that have already been written, and if we do not have a decent amount of money in that fund, which it's always been underfunded, it's only gone up and been funded still not properly by the LePage administration. When we don't have that budget stabilization fund appropriately funded, we go down in ratings through Standard & Poor's and Moody's. So I think that's important. And I think that we need to do better repair on our roads and our bridges, and I think that just doing a transportation bond every year doesn't cut the mustard. We need to better fund that, because every one of us, you all got here by driving. And when we have bad roads, it hurts the frames in our cars, it hurts our tires, we get worse gas mileage, and it's all in all a bad situation. It's less money that, I mean, our roads are pretty bad sometimes.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and it's probably difficult for the towns. I don't know if you want to pipe in on that. I'll let you talk a little.
One of the things that's happened just in state government is, I don't remember the year it was put into place, but the revenue sharing used to be 5% of the state income tax and sales tax. They have cut that back. It wasn't just Mr. LePage, but Baldacci did as well, cut it back to 2%, 2.5%. That is quite a bit of money to most communities, and it's based on the size of your community and valuation. So from what I've been told, Berwick has not funded their roads for a period of 6 years. And there's a lot of deterioration that takes place in that time frame. So since I've been here, we've got a program in place, but we haven't funded it fully. We've only funded it, the first year I came, they funded it at $450,000, which doesn't get you very far, and with road and reconstruction. On the last 2 years, it's only been about $350,000, and I haven't been able to stay on track with our road project. But this year, I've told the board, and we're meeting tonight, talk about capital projects and goals, and one of them is we need to fund roads this year. We need to fund it at $500,000 to $600,000, and that's still isn't going to get us where I would like to be, but some of it can come from our undesignated fund balance. It's over our 12% of what we have, so it won't come out of raising taxes, not all of it anyway. But it's very difficult, and criticize our governor for building this nice big surplus, which is great for the state, but we didn't get our full 5% that we have been getting for years. And that whole 5% was intended to help the property taxpayer to reduce their, costs in the town. So it's just not enough money to go around. I think that's part of it. But so that's what we're trying to do with infrastructure. We have 2 bridges in town that we need to fix. Those are each $500,000 each. Right now, they're not unsafe, but they're not up to where the DOT standards would like them. And they have a program, the state does that, the DOT will fund 50% and we'll fund the other 50%. So it'll be over $250,000 for each one, which is a substantial amount of money. For every $700,000 we spend, that's 1 mil to the mill rate. So it gets costly.
How is road repair, is it related to the number of houses on the road, or is there one of those things that goes across the road and detects how much traffic, or?
No, I decide based on the condition of the road, and there's varying things. It's I'm not sure how many of you have driven on Diamond Hill 3 years ago, where it was held together by patch. The road needed to be completely rebuilt, so we tore up all the pavement, and that becomes expensive to do stuff like that. And we're going to have to do that on Worcester Road, and we're going to have to do that on Pine Hill. The Little River Road coming down the road and Long Meadow. But we spread them out depending upon what we think we have for funding coming. And then if I have roads, like we had some of the smaller roads in town that were starting to deteriorate a bit, and we do what they call as a shim and overlay, and that will preserve that road if it's not needing to be rebuilt. And I try to avoid rebuilding roads, but there are many here that need to have that done. And we do sections. Sometimes we were looking at doing partial Pine Hill, where they had done put material down a few years ago, and it seems to be holding up. But we're probably going to reclaim the whole thing and have to rebuild it. We've been up there ditching and putting in new culverts last year and this year, but we just didn't have the money this year. So, but I've revamped my whole capital improvement program for roads for the next 7 years, and I hope we can stay on track.
I think we should do a school bus litmus test. And that is, you follow the school bus and you see how high the little kids bounce in the back seat. And that's the road that should be done first. The kids are way up to the top of the bus.
So we rebuilt Wentworth Road a few years back, and we did a base. We tore all of that up and rebuilt the base and put 2 inches of binder down. We have to go back next year to put the final travel layer on, which is about 1.5 inches of pavement, and that should last.
So,
I'd like to bring up
I have a couple of, oh, excuse me.
I'd like to bring up a question along the same line that we've been discussing. My name is Andy Buckman, by the way. I'm a lifelong resident here in Berwick. When does it become a safety issue? Because we have several safety issues that are taking place in this town, and it's right in the downtown area. Number one, since they put in the brewery, you got people darting across the road where there's no crosswalks. There's poor lighting. You can very see them. People going the wrong way around that town hall. Why can't we just put up a sign that says, "Do not enter"? I mean, I almost got hit head on last night. I was coming around the town hall to go to a meeting. And as I was, guy pulled right out of the parking lot, turned right and drove right up, practically hit me. And when I got out, because I was a little bit more upset than I am right now, but I got out, I said to him, I says, "Do you know that this is a one-way street?" And he was speaking some language that I couldn't even understand, let alone, when he had Massachusetts plates on his car. And usually there's 5 or 6 policemen in the square that time of night, because they're watching the traffic like a hawk. Last night, not a one.
So
You know?
the Berwick
That's Route 9. Route 9 is responsible for that intersection.
James Bellissimo was working, they were doing a downtown traffic study.
Yeah,
hear
the traffic study is already started. There was a public hearing last Wednesday to get input. There's a survey online, but they're going to be looking at directional changes possibly, parking availability, sidewalks, and making it more pedestrian friendly and bike friendly. It's a longer process than what you've had before. It probably will not be completed until March to May sometime. And that was funded, we've provided 20% of the money, but the state DOT provided half of that, and then CATS, which is more federal money, provided the other half for the study. So when we're done, we're hoping that we'll have a real good plan of how to improve the downtown area. That's where we're focusing a lot of our attention. But you're right, the sidewalks aren't good, the crosswalks are in the wrong place, and you need more lighting. And those are all planned to come, you know, the Envision Berwick group, and James Bellissimo and his group, and Envision Berwick, they're all trying, you know, to find ways we can fund it, but it's expensive. You're talking, just to put up decorative lighting, you're talking probably $4,000 or $5,000 for each light. And so that you know, we look at grants, but the money coming from the federal government for the CDBG funding is based on low to moderate income standards or blight, and it's very, very competitive. And we are planning to apply for one of the grants. Berwick, even prior to me coming here, has done a lot of legwork and has a lot of data to show that we should be able to qualify much easier.
You know, sure, it's nice to have the decorative lighting, you know, but, you know, the LED lights, one on a pole that sticks out over that road, I mean, you don't have to go decorative. You don't have to spend the extra $200,000 to get all decorative lighting down there. I mean, I think that us as a community and as a state are trying to glorify everything. Let's make this better and bigger. We're gonna have the biggest house in town, or we're gonna have this, you know? But you know what? We're average people. We're all, look around here, I'd say we're all retired in this room. You know? Or some of us are retired but are still working. You know, I know friends of mine that are working 2 jobs and they're in their 70s. You know, and what are we going to get this year? Oh yes, a tax increase. So, I mean, you know, when's it going to stop? When are we going to, you know, finally get the bleeding stopped on us? You know, this is what I think that is wrong with a lot of this planning. Oh yeah, let's spend all this money here, you know, and do we need that? Do we actually need that?
It should be done in a fiscally responsible manner. I agree with you 100%. And I do think that I've seen people come out of that parking lot and take a right. And it's kind of been, it has been horrifying. I think a one-way sign, please, one way, would be a really good idea right there anyway for an immediate. And that's, I think our highway department can whip one of those up, probably lickety-split. And I think that would be a good idea. But I agree with you, Andy. I think that we do need to be more fiscally responsible. Money doesn't grow on trees. It's like we were talking about that surplus. And that is the money of the taxpayers. The taxpayers of this state have invested in that. And so maybe it's time that I know that a lot of you are retired, but an income tax reduction would be nice. And if the money's there, then maybe we could give the people an income tax reduction with some of that surplus. And, you know, and also, like I said before, the budget stabilization fund, the rainy day fund, we could have an economic turndown. And if we do, then we have to be prepared for that. And it's just like when we spend, we should spend frugally and make sure that we're looking 20 years out into the future so that we're watching out for our family members and our friends and our neighbors and our communities.
Beth, I have a couple of questions here
Sure, go
about
ahead.
education,
Sure,
okay?
go ahead.
There's an act there. Now, I'm not familiar with Maine statutes the way you are, but there's a bill there, 256, that would increase broadband access
Got it.
for schools and for libraries. And are you going to support that? I don't know where that is in the process, but I
think-
believe it's part of the
So we
this
wouldn't have an
session.
LD for this year.
It's LD 256.
So this was a past bill, I'm
I'm
assuming.
not sure, I thought it was this year, it could have been 127, but I thought it was 128.
It could have been,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You don't
I remember some bill numbers, usually because
Okay,
they stick in my
okay.
craw so bad.
Well,
But
maybe you
most
can
of them
answer the
don't.
general question, would you be for increased
So,
funding for?
We have the Department of Economic Development, and they have actually put out a full statewide broadband plan, and that should be coming forward this year. When it comes to funding, I recall one bill, and I voted against the majority report on that bill for it, and it was for funding for schools and libraries, and it was a one-time funding, and this might be the bill. And what I asked for instead, and I don't remember the cost, it wasn't a huge cost, but I asked to have that put in the general fund, and to have that come from the general fund and come out of, and be budgeted, so that it wasn't here and there, and it didn't have to be like a pilot program. So I actually wrote the minority report, and that might be the bill. I wrote it with Jeff Hanley, and it was to ensure that that program stayed in place year in and year out, that it was always a part of our budget, so it was continually funded. Because I know that it's important. I know people walk into this library, they get on that computer right there, and they're looking for jobs. And without that computer or without access, they're not gonna be able to find that job. And you can go on to like Indeed.com, and you can find a job for just about anything you're looking for. And you can set up your own email account and be able to come in here when you're open to be able to access that. So a lot of times I don't believe in spending willy-nilly, but I do believe in what the Economic Development Committee has put forward. And I don't know if that's gonna stay. I know that our new Governor-elect Janet Mills has said that that is a priority. And so hopefully she will use the plan that is in place that is supposed to launch.
All right, there's another bill that would fund preschool programs, okay, at 4 years, okay? And that is LD 603. And, funding preschool programs for 4 years on is a pretty important thing here for our children, okay? It would seem to me. Is that something that you would be supporting? Are you familiar with that
I'm
piece of
not
legislation?
familiar with that, however, I am not quite so sure that funding a program for 4-year-olds, when we have such problems funding higher levels of education, and I mean, money doesn't grow on trees, and I think that a lot of times it's better for children to be home than to be in school. That's a personal opinion. I would have to see what the outcome of that was, what the give and take was on it. I don't have the bill in front of me. So I generally don't speak on a bill unless I know exactly what's in it, because sometimes.
Are you generally for, Beth, are you generally for early intervention programs?
For early
And
intervention,
early Head
yes.
Start programs for the schools in Maine, for the children in Maine? Are those programs that you generally support?
Head Start I do not
Head
support.
Start? Okay.
No,
you
I
don't
never have.
support that?
No,
How
I
about
don't.
early intervention programs, which are sort of linked to that? if it's a
Some of
federally
them
funded
are. I think there's a
program?
better way to do them than how we're doing them. And I think that education's it's a hard topic to talk about. I know that I was fairly disappointed with our education system as a whole. Seeing kids move on and go out of our educational system and need so much remedial math and remedial English and remedial courses, which is, it's costing a fortune for that alone. And I think that we need to concentrate, but sometimes I think that the problem, which it's hard to say this, but a lot of the problems begin at home, and we expect our poor teachers to do everything. And I think that our society as a whole is straying and putting too much responsibility on the educational system and taking it away from parents.
Well, you do agree that there is a marked improvement in the performance as adults, as young children, as they advance in the system, if they've had access to some of those early programs? I mean, isn't that what the experts are telling
Most
us?
children. Most
And
children.
it is proven that the earlier you catch them and teach, the better their reading skills, which increase their success rate throughout school. So you can't have it both ways. You know, we either invest early and often, or we're paying on the other end, as you.
I know the superintendent this year talked about the influx of a lot of special needs kids this year. But other kids coming in who weren't necessarily special needs kids come from very poor families. And some of them had never even seen a book before. And these are the kinds of kids that we have. We have a lot of poor people, even in southern Maine, who can't afford to pay for childcare. And my son and daughter pay for childcare, and I can't believe what it costs today compared to what, well, my kids were little. And you got to have both people out in the workforce. It's very, very hard. But I think Steve was taken aback this year by just the influx they had this year and the impact on the school system. And a lot of it comes from not just people being poor and not having good jobs, but also from the drug culture that we're trying to deal with. So the parents can't be responsible because they aren't responsible. So it's a real difficult topic to figure.
It is, Steve. And one thing the Berwick Library is doing is partnering with the Tri-Town Bookmobile. So the Bookmobile is out of MSAD number 60, and it is visiting daycare centers. And when they visit daycare centers, I try and go over and do a story time with these little children, and it just adds a little extra. And what we want to do here is catch those children that have caregivers that can bring them to the library, and they're not working. I mean, you have both parents working now, so it's very hard. We're looking at what time we're offering story times. We're even going to experiment with an evening story time, so working parents can come here and get that extra early literacy practice that these kids need. We have a reader dog that comes in for the reluctant readers, the children that are afraid to read to other in public or out loud, and they go to school and they're intimidated. They come here, they practice with the little dog, they read to the dog, and they gain confidence in their skills. We have to catch these kids early with literacy, or we're going to be paying on the other end.
So that's voluntary. That's a voluntary.
No, that is the reader dog
Right.
comes with a volunteer. She does, yes, but we work hard here to fill in those gaps that are clearly happening.
So, and it is a problem. When I look at parents today not reading to their kids, that's horrifying to me. I mean, my big time with my family, my poor husband, we had a double bed. He'd come home, and it was me, my 4 kids, my dog, my 2 cats, all in the double bed with a pile of books and all of us snoring, and that was the best time of our day. And so, and they do that with their children, and so I'm watching that, things like that. It does happen in a lot of families, but adults need to be addressed as well. We need to make parents, I don't know how, and I've been on the school board and we've talked about this. Parents need to be responsible for their children, and I know there are gaps, and when you talk about the drugs, it's awful watching the drug epidemic that's going on, and I don't know how to address that.
Well, Beth, it seems to me that what you're talking about is something that you, as a legislator, can't mandate. You can't
No, I
mandate that
can't
parents do
mandate.
more with their children in the
nobody
way of
can
reading to
mandate that.
them. And I agree with you, that's extremely important, but that's where the role of something like what Sharon is doing with our library here is so important, because
I really believe parents want to do the right thing. They don't always have the tools to do that. That's where we come in offering programs to help them. Some of these parents need to be educated on how to parent.
I agree.
That's.
I agree, and volunteerism has been, I mean, you learn a lot through volunteerism, through sports, even just sporting programs, baseball, little league, softball, soccer leagues, and we learn how to interact and people, and I mean, and those are basically all volunteer activities. And you could probably use some volunteers too to help with those
certainly
programs.
could.
You know?
But I
Also-
think if
And
you
that's a
look at
pitch, that's a pitch for volunteers.
If you look at a program that takes 4-year-olds and helps get them out of that type of situation and environment, the parents are learning at the same time. You're helping children, you're helping parents. So just keep it in mind when you're looking at this legislation. It isn't just, should we spend money on 4-year-olds? I don't know where else it's more important in this state, to spend, in any state, to spend money on children, along with the parents, the learning too. We see it. Now, one thing I see in this town, which really is so encouraging and wonderful, I see new people coming through the door all the time with their kids. I don't know how many new, do you have an idea of how many new families have moved
We
into?
haven't done a count, but there's a lot of,
It's a lot.
it's a lot of people
It's
moving in.
wonderful.
There's a lot of new homes this past year. We grew in probably close to $15 million in value. None of that was really commercial building that I'm aware of. Most of it was residential. So that tells you that Berwick is growing.
It
It's
is.
growing. I
I've-
see it here.
Yeah, I've met hundreds of new people, knocking on doors,
Right.
and I've met hundreds of new people.
Right.
Better
Hundreds.
improve my roads, huh?
Yeah, you better. Yeah.
are there early childhood programs that you would support, Beth, okay? I know I'm hammering away at that, but I think that, you know, we're here as a community of supporters of the library, and, you know, the people that we serve are people who need access to literacy, okay?
Everyone needs access to literacy. It's, will they take advantage of it?
Yes, so are there?
And I can't mandate that.
Can you think of a program that you would support? I mean, either present legislation there, before the legislature, or something that, you know, has been discussed, that.
Well, and when I talk about Head Start, I've seen the numbers, the fiscal numbers on that, and it has been a very expensive, nationally. It's been very, very expensive, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that we could spend the money in much better ways. I think, and educating parents is, parents who are having new children, and giving them the tools that they need to make sure that their children know that even the parents sometimes don't know how to read or read properly. So if we can't, and the parents have the children far more than the teachers or any Head Start program does. They're with those children the vast majority of the time. Teachers have the children 6 hours a day, 185 days out of the year. What happens the rest of the time?
The thing that is interesting, I'm a retired college professor. I've taught for about 44 years in a community college now in this state. I could write books on from rags to riches, earlier literacy, and we're seeing more and more from a developmental specialist that the sooner literacy language, logic, and mathematics are the ones that are featured in schools. And if they don't have those early skills, when you talk about tools, this is one of the tools, this library. I mean, this is a jewel in terms of that springboard into education. And kids are going to read, I agree, if the parents read, but if parents have a resource like this place, they come here. And it, every student that I used to ask at the end of semester, whatever, did you read as a child? And invariably, the good students say yes. I mean, it's just such an important aspect. So early literacy, the things that you were talking about, Ann, I can't tell you, I mean, I've lived it. I mean, I could write books about the success stories. They're coming in with no education, coming to a community college, they're wonderful, getting that degree, going to four-year school, graduate school. And the interesting thing is, you want to do that because the better educated they are, more likely they're going to be better tax-paying citizens.
Right.
I mean, it's a, I don't mean to say it's not, it's a
No, I know what
no-brainer.
you're saying. I want everybody to be rich. That's,
Yeah,
you know,
well, I
it's-
don't care so much about that, but at least have
But-
choices.
And so, I mean, when you think about something like that, parents, they go into a delivery room. They start with prenatal. They start. I mean, we send people home with a bag of goodies from the hospital. Children's books should be in that.
They
you
are
know?
in Maine.
In Maine, they are.
They are.
See, I haven't had a child in a really long
Yeah.
time. Thank goodness.
Early
But
readers
Early
program,
readers
yeah.
and things like that, I think, are imperative.
Barbara
And
Bush
to
did that,
to
yeah.
show parents, I mean, when you're part of prenatal care should be how imperative it is that your child, you know, the connection between a mother and a father and the bonds between the children through books is amazing. It's, I know, I've seen it, I've
It
seen
is.
it through all of my children, my children's friends. My house was, I had a 6-bedroom house, that big one up on the hill, and I never knew how many kids were gonna be in my house reading and I mean, yeah, they played video games too, but we also, we did a lot of fun stuff and charades and different games and turned things off, turned off the phones. Well,
But all parents don't know to do that.
exactly.
And I worked with a lady when I was working, and she was in a wheelchair. She was disabled. If she hadn't had Head Start for her 2 children, a boy and a girl, they would have had, she didn't know how to do it. She had needs herself,
Mhm.
and she had these 2 children because she wanted the children. She didn't have a husband, she didn't have a partner, and she was in the system, you know, a system where she was receiving services, but she had these 2 children. If it wasn't for Head Start, these children wouldn't have had any, she didn't know how to do it. She needed services herself. So it's not that Head Start has not done any good. They have done good.
I didn't say they haven't done any good. I think
But you
that we
said
can-
you wouldn't support Head
I
Start.
think that we can do things in a more fiscally responsible manner.
So can't there be changes though to Head Start?
There probably could be, but every time anybody tries to make changes on programs, it seems like things just go flying up in the air and names get called and
Head Start's one of the few programs in this country that they have written reports on that actually does
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And all of the others fall to the side. Food, free lunch program and Head Start haven't lost any ground. The reports are all
I have
good.
reports that say otherwise.
I,
on that.
well, on a whole, they still are at the top of those federally funded programs that
But
work.
I think the idea is that you have to invest. I mean, that's the point.
I
And so
agree.
if you put money elsewhere, I mean, it's foolishness to think that any kind of help or mentoring is not a good thing. I mean, from my perspective, I've seen it. I mean, I've lived it. I've
And
worked
I
professionally.
agree with you. I think that, and it's, I don't know, maybe I didn't say it properly. The parents are with the child the most.
Right, but if you educate the parents, then they're going to pass it along. It's
To the children.
intergenerational.
Correct.
Right, and so you invest early, and then you have an educated adult, they know what to do.
But why do we have so many adults now?
Because their parents didn't take them to the library. They didn't do what you did.
There you go.
Yes.
I
And
don't
that's
know
why
that-
libraries are so important now.
Yeah.
Because those people that don't have computers at home,
Mhm.
you're right, they're coming in here. And one of the things that Susan Collins said today was, it's a safe place for students to go after school.
And also, I think there's other information that sometimes when we talk about our phones and our computers and the laptop program, and I know, Marilyn, you've been in the schools for years, I look at that program and frankly, I have seen with my own children and many of the other children that have come through my house, that a physical book in front of them is a much better learning tool than a computer screen. And I think that that's a problem too. We just give our kids computer. Now, I can honestly say that my youngest did his learning online, but he also had a lot of books and books after books after books. I can't tell you how much they cost. And sometimes he was here walking to this library, and the University of Maine, he was one of 2 students that actually for a whole year did the University of Maine program from home. But a lot of it were physical books, and they're books that he could mark up, his own books, or he could put things in parentheses with pencils. And I think that's a problem with learning too, is we're expecting our kids to learn, or we give them so much computer time. I think real books are better educators. And
Well,
maybe
it's gonna take both, though.
It-
It's not just
absolutely.
one or the other.
No, it's not one or the other. However, I've seen that we've walked away in a lot of places from libraries, and I think that's a very sad thing. I think that they are an integral meeting place in our communities. I see all the time the different things that you're doing in this library, and I think it's a benefit to our community. I've heard mothers say that one of the first things they do when they move here with their young kids is check out the library, and the kids do feel safe here. And they feel safe, and it's something to do. But it's always surprised me about this library. I remember always when I was younger going in and everybody shh, shh, and tell us to be quiet. And here we have these interactions.
Yeah, no,
So-
we're very loud now. We're very loud. No one's gonna shush you. I want to invite you all to have some coffee and maybe talk to Steve and Beth on your own too. But you know, we're getting some great information for you. But I want to make it more personal, if you'd like.
Sure.
Please, we made a whole bunch of coffee, and there's nice brownies there too.
Did anybody else have any other questions?
So the library has grown to the point, this library has grown to the point where we need to utilize the downstairs space that
That's
hasn't
awesome.
been utilized.
That's awesome.
Because there wasn't money, 14
Right.
years ago to do it. So we're looking to renovate the basement, to expand space for the children's services and for community meetings.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It really is awesome. Congratulations.
Well, we have to get it formalized here because it takes money, but.
Uh-oh.
Stop beating the bush.
That's
Yeah.
all about you, pal.
I don't know about that. Thank you all for coming.
Hi, I'm Sharon Kelly, the director at the Berwick Public Library.
And I'm Paula Lepore, president of the Berwick Library Association.
Today we had a meet and greet with Representative Beth O'Connor and Town Manager Steve Eldridge, who came to talk about different issues that are facing their constituents today in the town of Berwick.
And we want to do more of these meet and greets, so we're going to switch off from daytime to night so that more people can attend. It was attended today by some, but if we do an evening, there may be more families that would be able to attend.
And we'd love you to join us. So keep your eyes on the newsletter, in the newspaper, and please join us for the next meet and greet with our state representatives and town officials. Thank you.
And thank you to Beth O'Connor, for the state representative, for coming today, and to Steve Eldridge, who's our town manager for Berwick, for coming today.